everyone, Lucamus Prime here, so it's time for the next episode of my series, Old is Better Than New. And in today's video, I thought this time I'd cover another character where I personally think that old is better than the new for that character. And this character is actually as well a villain who's just responsible for creating what is probably my favourite TV show villain of all time, from what was one of my favourite shows of all time, which I've already covered in this series. And that show, of course, is Doctor Who. And this character, of course, created, of course, the Daleks. And that creator, who I personally think old is better than new for that character, is none other than Davros. So, this episode is covering why I personally think he's better in the old than the new. So, now, when it comes to what Davros means to me as a villain, I, of course, was first exposed to him when I one day watched an old Dalek story in Tom Baker's era of Doctor Who, in the classic era. And I watched the story called Genesis of the Daleks, which was all about the creation of the Daleks, a phenomenal story about the creation of the Daleks. And I was first exposed to Davros, played by Michael Wisher, may he rest in peace. And Michael Wisher definitely really nailed it as the Daleks creator. Definitely did a really great job playing Davros in that. And I thought Davros was a really interesting and mysterious character, and I personally really love that about him. And I thought he was really unique how he's, of course, a brilliant scientist who's limited to only having one hand, and of course, he's in a life support chair. And despite this condition, he's able to create probably what is, in my opinion, the greatest Doctor Who villains of all time. So, I personally really loved the characterisation in Genesis of the Daleks. It was, in my opinion, awesome. Then after that, I saw him again in the series called Destiny of the Daleks, which was also a good Tom Baker Dalek story as well. But this time played by David Goodison, may he also rest in peace. And I thought he was once again really good in that, still the great villain that I know. And then, of course, he came back in Resurrection of the Daleks, now played by Terry Molloy. And I definitely really loved Terry as Davros. I thought he did a great job playing him too as well. And in these stories, I think Davros was just a brilliant villain who was well written and was very mysterious and interesting. Just a joy to watch, in my opinion. Just a great villain. And created, of course, by the legendary Terry Nation, may he rest in peace. And I also loved him returning in stories such as Revelation of the Daleks, and also the last classic story, which of course was Remembrance of the Daleks, where he, of course, was revealed in disguise as the Dalek Emperor, which was definitely a big surprise. Then after that, we didn't see Davros again until the revived series in what is actually, in of course, the two parts, which is actually my favourite episodes of the series overall, which is The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, where he's now played, of course, by Julian Bleach. And this, of course, is what my figure Davros is based on here. And seeing Davros back was definitely a massive surprise. And his return is one of many reasons why The Stolen Earth and Journey's End are my favourite episodes of Doctor Who of all time. Like, when I was a little kid, I was so hyped to see him back in the Revive series. And I loved his redesign where he, of course, had the new Dalek design for his life support chair. That was just, my opinion, really well made, in my opinion. And Julian Bleach is a good actor. I think he did a really great job playing Davros when he came back, because he definitely had big shoes to fill when you compare him to people like Michael Wisher and Terry Molloy, but I think he really nailed it. Then he came back again, of course, in the two-part of Series 9's premiere, which is The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar, which was a great start to a 9 series, in my opinion, because it brought about the Daleks, and I love how it brought about Davros, and we got to know more about him, such as, of course, his childhood, which was definitely, in my opinion, really cool. But, unfortunately, when it comes to his most recent appearance in the series, that was where, in my opinion, he was completely massacred. Because while I, of course, stopped watching Doctor Who in 2021 after I despised the 13th series, they did, however, release a short episode called Destination Scarrow on YouTube, and it was all over Twitter as well, so I didn't miss it in the news. And because it was only about 5 minutes, I decided to see what happened in it, because there were lots of people talking about it. And when I noticed, of course, it was involving the Doctor going back to Scarrow, and he was, of course, involved in the creation of the Daleks, I was really concerned, especially after what happened before. And it was definitely this special that made me realise that Russell T Davies is not going to save his show. He's only going to make it worse than it already is, in my opinion. Because what it did to Davros is they took away his life support chair, and instead, he just looked like a really bad, generic, one-dimensional scientist. And that was it. Not even, of course, with his missing eyes or his cybernetic eye. Like, he's just a generic scientist, and that's it. I mean, Julian Bleach did good in that special for what he was given, but I feel that, in my opinion, his writing as well was terrible. Not to mention, and that special, in my opinion, is horrible, because it literally makes the Doctor responsible for creating his own deadliest enemy of all time. and it completely retcons everything, really. Like, it retcons Genesis of Darkness, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest Doctor Who stories ever written. And I was so angry about that. Especially how it did to Davros. Like, I think it's the worst retcon than Timeless Children. Mainly because I just hate the idea of a Doctor being involved in creating his own deadliest enemy. Especially when it's played by David Tennant, my favourite Doctor Who actor of all time. But his existence as a 14th Doctor, in my opinion, makes zero sense anyway. And when it comes to Russell T Davies as well, I used to love him as a showrunner for Doctor Who, of course, when he was, of course, a showrunner for the first 4 series before Stephen Moffat took over from Series 5 onward. And there was bits of hope that he would probably save the series after, of course, Chris Chibnall left, and, good riddance to him. But sadly, this short episode was proof that he hasn't, because of what he did to Davros. And in my opinion, his explanation for why he changed Davros to not being in his lifeport chair anymore is stupid. Because he said there's a problem with old Davros being that he's in a wheelchair. Now, let's stop right there for a moment, because this is not a wheelchair that he's in. This is a life support chair. Because if Davros was taken out of his chair, he'd be dead. It's not a wheelchair. So that's one thing he got wrong. And saying he's got problems with it because there's a long history of these problems. But there's also, as well, a good long history of several villains who are disabled. But despite being disabled, they prove to be absolutely phenomenal villains. There's tons I could name examples of them, really. And Davros is most definitely one of them. And last time I checked, no one even complained about them being disabled because they're great villains to watch. They're well written, fantastic, especially Davros in classic Doctor Who. And also, if Russell really had a problem with Davros of being a disabled character, why did he bring him back looking like this in Series 4 when he was showrunner? Exactly. Doesn't make any sense, does it? He claims he's had a problem with Davros being disabled, yet he brings him back in his full glory like this in Series 4 in 2008. That's just, in my opinion, so stupid of it. It makes no sense at all. So, I have no respect for Russell T Davies at all for saying that. I just think it's really stupid. Because Davros isn't the only villain who's been disabled and has been well received by fans. There's tons I could name examples of them who are well written and well received, and who I definitely am a fan of too as well. So, I personally think that what we did to Davros was, in my opinion, so stupid. And not to mention, that special, in my opinion, was absolutely terrible, just like I'm more certain the rest of the anniversary specials were from what I've heard about them. So, I was very angry with that special, what we did to Davros. You go from this well-written genius scientist to, in my opinion, just a generic joke for a villain. Like, a character who I can't even imagine as being Davros. Like, the only way I could tell it was Davros was because of Julian Bleach's voice, and that was it. Other than that, I couldn't tell it was Davros, because everything that made Davros so distinguishable was gone. So I personally think that was just so stupid what they did. Really stupid. So, as far as I'm concerned, Davros is much better in the old Doctor Who than the new, as far as I'm concerned. I like to pretend that his last great episode he was in was a Series 9 2-part opening, and that's it. No more after that, as far as I'm concerned, for Davros. Because I personally think Doctor Who's a long dead franchise anyway. Nothing can fix it, in my opinion. Not even Russell T Davies can fix it at all. No chance. And that's why I'm not going to give any of his series a single second of my time at all. Because in my opinion, from what I've heard about them, they suck. And I'm not going to waste my time seeing them at all. So, as far as I'm concerned, guys, Davros is a much better character in the old than the new. So, you know the drill, guys. Be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to tell us in the comments what you guys think of Davros. Do you think he's better in the old than the new? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe and moves to come in the future. And Alonzi.